All right, so get ready, because today we're diving into something pretty unbelievable. We're going to be looking at Therese Neumann.
Wow.
She's this Catholic woman from Germany, and she claims to have lived for years without any food or water.
Wow.
And that's not even all. There are other, even more amazing things about her. But here's the twist. We're going to see all of this through the eyes of Paramahansa Yogananda.
Oh, Yogananda.
Yeah, the famous yogi, the one who brought yoga and meditation to, everyone in the West.
Yeah, that's going to be a fascinating perspective. I mean, Eastern spirituality meeting Western mysticism. It's going to be a wild ride.
Exactly, and we're going to be using Yogananda's autobiography as our guide. He actually met Therese during his travels in Europe back in the 1930s.
Oh, wow. So he, personally encountered her.
He did. So imagine it's 1935. Yogananda's getting ready to go back to India after teaching in America for 15 years.
Okay.
And he gets this message, like a spiritual summons from his guru, telling him it's time to come home. But Yogananda, he's got this one detour he really wants to take first.
Oh, interesting. Where?
He wants to meet Therese Neumann, this woman who says she can live without eating or drinking.
Oh, right. That's right.
And that she has the stigmata.
Oh, yeah. For those who might not know, stigmata refers to wounds appearing on the body that they mirror the wounds that Jesus Christ suffered during his crucifixion.
Right, on the hands and feet, sometimes the forehead and side.
Yeah, and it's often connected to, really intense religious devotion and mystical experiences.
And Therese's case was particularly interesting because her claims weren't just accepted blindly. Doctors and scientists actually observed her. Some were even skeptical at first, but they came to believe her experiences were real.
Oh, wow. So there's documented observation along with these seemingly impossible events.
Yeah, and that's precisely what drew Yogananda to her. He believed that truth could be found across different spiritual traditions and wanted to understand Therese through his perspective as a yogi.
So it wasn't about proving or disproving her claims. It was more about understanding them through a different lens.
Exactly. So Yogananda sets off with his companions to Connersreuth.
To find Therese?
Yep, that's the small village in Bavaria where she lived.
Okay.
But when they get there, things don't exactly go as planned.
What happened? Did they, get lost?
Well, yeah, kinda. They couldn't find her at first.
Oh, no.
But then they had this chance encounter with a guy who spoke English.
Okay.
And he told them that Therese often visited a Professor Wirtz, a seminary master, in Eichstätt.
Eichstätt.
Yeah, about 80 miles away.
Oh, okay.
And this little detour ends up being just what they needed. They go to Eichstätt, and that's where they finally get to meet Therese face to face.
It's sometimes a wrong turn leads you right where you need to be. So what was she like? Did she live up to all the hype?
Well, from what Yogananda writes, Professor Wirtz welcomed them really warmly. And even though the local bishop had all these restrictions on Therese seeing visitors, she agreed to meet Yogananda. She even called him the man of God from India.
Wow.
And when she walked into the room, Yogananda said she just radiated this sense of peace and joy.
Really?
Yeah. And she looked youthful and healthy. It didn't really match the image you might have of someone who supposedly never ate.
Yeah, not exactly the frail ascetic mystic you'd expect.
Right. So being the direct guy he was, Yogananda just went straight to the point.
He asked her about the food thing.
Yep. He just flat out asked her, "Don't you eat anything?"
I wonder what she said to that.
Well, her answer was pretty simple, but also really intriguing. She said, "No, except a consecrated rice flour wafer once every morning at 6 o'clock.
So she did consume something. Just this tiny wafer.
Yeah, but then she added that she lives by God's light.
Lives by God's light. What did Yogananda make of that?
Well, it actually resonated with his own Eastern spiritual understanding.
You mean the idea of drawing energy from something other than physical food? Like prana, the life force?
Exactly. Yogananda saw it as an example of scientific principles at work.
Okay, so he wasn't dismissing it as some supernatural phenomenon.
Nope, he thought it was science. Just maybe science that Western science hadn't fully grasped yet.
Interesting. Did they talk about her stigmata?
They did, and Yogananda noticed that the wounds on her hands had recently healed. And he pointed out that the shape was really unique. They looked like square iron nails with these crescent tips. Apparently, that kind of nail is still used in the East.
Interesting. So he's piecing together these details, trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah. They also talked about her weekly experience of Christ's passion. She would lose weight, bleed from her stigmata, and even physically change during these episodes.
It sounds incredibly intense. Almost disturbing.
Yeah, it does. But here's the thing, she didn't describe it with any fear or dread. No. Instead, it seemed like she accepted it. Like there was even joy in her connection to Christ's suffering.
Wow. So it wasn't just pain.
No, it was more than that. And Yogananda saw it as a testament to her incredible devotion and the bond between Christ and his followers.
So her life, even with all the suffering, was a powerful example of faith in action.
That's how Yogananda saw it. But it wasn't just her words. Professor Wirtz had some insights into her daily life that were pretty mind-boggling.
Oh yeah, like what?
Well, he had spent quite a bit of time with her, and he said she had this incredible stamina when they traveled. No fatigue, no hunger, even though she wasn't eating.
It defies logic.
Right. And then he mentioned some physiological things like her stomach had shrunk, she didn't have any excretions, and her skin was surprisingly healthy.
All of this just goes against what we think we know about the human body.
Yeah, it's a lot to wrap your head around. We've got a woman who doesn't eat, has the stigmata, and experiences Christ's passion every week, all while remaining fairly healthy and active.
I can't imagine what it must have been like to witness all of that firsthand.
Well, that's what we're going to delve into next, because Yogananda didn't just hear about these trance states, he actually saw one for himself. It's really something else. Like, did he just walk in and watch?
Well, not exactly. Yogananda, he prepared himself before entering the room.
Okay, how so?
He entered a yogic trance state.
Okay, now for our listeners who aren't yoga experts, can you explain what that means? It's not like just spacing out, is it?
No, not at all. In yogic traditions, a trance is more like heightened awareness. You achieve it through deep meditation, controlled breathing. It's about directing your energy and focus inward,
So like perceiving reality on a different level.
Exactly. So he's going into this experience already in an altered state.
Wow. So what did he see when he walked into that room?
Even for Yogananda, who had experience with mystical stuff, what he saw was powerful. He described blood flowing from Therese's lower eyelids.
Wow.
And the cloths around her head, soaked with blood from the stigmata on her forehead.
Oh, wow.
Her white robe was stained with blood over her heart.
It's so visual, like you can almost picture it.
It was real, not just some idea.
And Yogananda was in that heightened state, that trance.
Yeah. He even described seeing scenes from Therese's vision. Like she was watching Jesus carrying the cross, then reacted as if she saw him fall. It was like she was reliving it all.
But how can you know if it was real or just in her head? I mean, could it have been a physical reaction to her faith?
It's been debated for ages. Some say genuine miracles, others say psychological.
Yeah.
Yogananda, he didn't really give an answer, but he said the intensity was undeniable.
It sounds like it. Didn't someone actually faint during all this?
Yes. Mr. Wright, who was traveling with Yogananda, passed out.
Oh, wow.
He said later it was just the sheer power of what he saw, called it terrifying.
I bet. Did Yogananda help him?
He was slowly coming out of his trance and so focused on Therese. She was pale from blood loss, but also peaceful. He didn't even notice Mr. Wright at
There's
first.
so much going on.
He eventually saw them carrying him out.
Pale, but peaceful. It's
Yeah.
like two opposites at the same time.
It captures the whole thing, right?
So, did they leave right after that?
They stayed a while longer, actually talked to Therese's brothers.
Oh, interesting. What did they say?
They said that even with that weekly experience, she barely slept, had tons of energy, loved nature, and spent time writing to people who asked for her prayers.
It's weird, right? Like, intense suffering, but a normal life, too.
It is. But her brothers, they shared something else.
Oh, what's that?
They said her not eating started when she prayed to take on someone else's illness.
Really? Whose?
A young man in her parish had a throat disease.
So it was like an act of sacrifice, taking on his suffering.
That's how it was presented.
Wow. So it wasn't about her, it was about helping others.
It adds a whole other layer to her story, doesn't it?
It does. Makes you think about suffering, sacrifice, compassion.
Yeah. It's complex.
So does Yogananda stay focused on Therese after all this?
He doesn't. It obviously made an impact, but he keeps traveling.
Okay, where to?
Through Europe. He went to Assisi to honor St. Francis, even to Greece to see those old temples.
It's like his own pilgrimage, right? Connecting with all these different traditions.
You got it. He's expanding his understanding of spirituality.
It's cool how open he is to it all.
It is. So where does he end up?
Back in India, right?
Eventually. But first, Palestine.
Oh, right, because of his devotion to Jesus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he talks about feeling Christ's spirit there. Bethlehem, Gethsemane, Calvary, all of it. It really solidified his belief in the power of pilgrimage.
So it's like his experience with Therese It opened him up in a new way to his own faith.
Yeah, it's not just theory anymore, it's real.
And then he finally goes home to India, changed by everything he saw and experienced.
That's right. The whole journey started with this detour to meet Therese, and it turned into this exploration of faith and spirituality across cultures.
It's amazing. We've covered so much ground, from a small village in Germany to the Holy Land. Maybe we should take a breath here and let it all sink in before we finish our deep dive. It's not just a story, it's like a glimpse into what humans are capable of, the power of faith, all of that. We're back, and I'm still thinking about everything we've talked about, with Therese and Yogananda. It's just one of those stories that sticks with you.
Yeah, definitely. Makes you question things, about what's really possible.
So, what do you think are the biggest things we can take away from all this? What makes the story relevant to us today?
Well, for me, it's that blend of Eastern and Western spirituality. Yogananda, he understood yoga and Eastern philosophy so deeply, and he was so open to Therese's experiences. He saw past the religious stuff.
Right. It wasn't about believing or not believing. It was about seeing the connections, the bigger picture.
Exactly. He saw it all through this lens of energy, consciousness, the life force that connects everything. And that challenges how we think in the West, where we often separate science and spirituality.
Yeah.
They can't coexist.
It does make you wonder if we've limited ourselves by thinking that way.
Yeah. And then there's the power of faith, right? Regardless of whether you believe her claims, Therese's life shows how much faith can impact someone.
It's true. She faced some intense challenges, but her faith seemed to give her this incredible strength.
It makes you think about what we could achieve if we truly believed in something. If we were open to possibilities that logic might say are impossible.
And speaking of impossible, this whole thing challenges what we think we know about the human body.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not eating, the stigmata, the visions, it all pushes the boundaries of biology and physics.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. So how do we even begin to understand these seemingly miraculous things? Is it delusion, or is there something more going on?
That's where it gets tricky, because there's no easy answer. We can look at it scientifically, try to explain it with what we know about the brain, the body, how it adapts.
Right.
But then there's also the vastness of the unknown, the possibility that there are things at work we just don't understand yet.
And Yogananda, he didn't try to force an answer. He presented it all and let people decide for themselves.
It's a much better approach, really. It encourages people to think for themselves.
So as we wrap up, what's the one thing we want our listeners to remember?
I think it's that Therese's story, seen through Yogananda's eyes, forces us to admit that we don't know everything. It makes us consider that there might be more to reality than we realize, more to the human experience than we've been told.
It's like a call to be curious, to be open to the unknown, and to accept that some mysteries might always be beyond us.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we humans have so much potential that we haven't even tapped into yet.
If you want to learn more about this, definitely check out Autobiography of a Yogi. It's an incredible book with amazing stories that will make you question everything.
It really encourages you to look inward and explore what it means to be human.
And with that, we're wrapping up our deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep searching, and stay open to the wonders around you.
Thank you for listening till the end. Please subscribe, turn on the notifications, like, comment, and share with your friends. This will help more listeners to discover our channel and content.